Hi, welcome back, everyone. I'm so happy to see all of your friendly faces. So thank you so much for joining us today. And feel free to let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. And since it's January, it's typically when people make resolutions. So feel free to share any food resolutions you might have made for 2020 as well. So feel free to put your comments and questions in the chat. And whether you're cooking along or just sitting back and watching this like a cooking show, go ahead and raise your hand and unmute yourself if you feel like doing so at any time as well. So let me introduce myself to those of you who don't already know me. I am Sylvia Ng, and I created CHEFS for Chefs as my passion project on the side. And CHEFS stands for Charities Helping Everyone for Seva. So I'm pairing it with my talented chef friends to offer virtual cooking classes to all of you so that we can raise money and raise awareness for a charity or organization. So hello, everyone. And last event, we were cooking with Chef Brandon Henry, and he was making a recipe inspired by his grandma that they used to cook in the Caribbean. It was a pumpkin and red bean soup with coconut milk, and it looked so yum. And his charity of choice this month is No Kid Hungry, which is a national campaign launched in 2010 by the nonprofit Share Our Strength to work toward ending childhood hunger. And they support federal programs such as SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, WIC, and the National School Breakfast, Lunch, and After School programs, while they also provide grants to food banks, schools, and community groups. And they work on legislative action, advocating for food assistance policies, working with chefs, celebrities, companies, and media partners to spread awareness. And so most of you out there who do know me, you know that I've worked for nonprofit hunger relief organizations and schools for a number of years. So hunger is really an important issue to me, especially among kids. And it's really unbelievable and really inexcusable, honestly, that over 13 million children in the US are food insecure. So I just want to say thank you to Chef Brandon for highlighting No Kid Hungry for us this month. So today, what am I cooking up? I am making a quick and comforting rice noodle ramen bowl for dinner, which is perfect for these chilly winter blues. It's like a way healthier version of those cup of noodles that you like to get for $1 or so. And it kind of gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling like a good old chicken noodle soup, but way better. So to start off, I have this chicken stock that I made. It's basically just a bunch of bones and leftover vegetable scraps that I had thrown into this pot. And it's great to use up a lot of those vegetable scraps, you know, whether they're onion peels or carrot ends. I think I've got some celery ends in here. And I also have some of those broccoli hearts. Not the hearts itself, but just the skin that I threw in here. So I'm actually just gonna strain this out. I boiled it yesterday and I let it sit in the fridge overnight so that any of the fat could come up to the top and I can skim it off. But I'm just gonna strain it into another pot so that I have my stock ready for our ramen noodle soup. And then with the leftovers, you can totally throw it into your compost, which I'm going to do, but I'm not throwing it into the compost in my backyard just because it has meat in it. If it was just the vegetables and I made a vegetable stock, I would totally throw it in there. But since, you know, we live kind of near the mountains, you definitely don't want some visitors at night going through your compost, right? So I'm actually gonna put this in my compost right now because I keep my compost in the freezer. You might think that's a little bit strange, but it actually freezes it so that it doesn't smell at my kitchen, and that when it's time for me to throw it into the compost outside, it won't attract any of those animals and critters out there. There we go. All right, there we go. So I'm gonna heat up this stock over here. And you could totally use the store-bought stuff too. I had the chicken bones, I had the vegetable scraps. So I just put a pot in the fridge, and you know, as the week went by, I filled it with cold water and I just kept throwing my vegetable scraps in there. It's a good use of the no waste cooking philosophy of using up your vegetable scraps to give your foods more flavor. So you can use stock for soups, You can use it to make your rice or to deglaze your, something that you're cooking in a pan. So there's so many uses for it. And I feel like, as part of that, not wanting to waste things, it's a great way to utilize all of these different ingredients that most people would just throw out into the garbage. And plus, when you see those things like bone broth out there, they can be really expensive. And I'm like, why pay all this money for these cartons of bone broth when I can just kind of make it at home myself? So I want to show you just what I'm going to be using today. I have these rice noodle ramen, I guess, individually portion sized 2-ounce bricks of ramen here. And I like using these because they are gluten-free and they are organic. So I love that about it. And for me, when I make this ramen noodle bowl, I usually do twice the amount of vegetables, if not more, to noodles. Because when you buy something that when you order takeout, a lot of the times it's like 90% noodles, and then maybe you get some protein and vegetables in there, where I'm kind of flipping it around and I'm adding way more vegetables to my noodles. So first, what I'm going to do is take my broccoli. So let me throw this other screen onto the spotlight. So I have this broccoli here, and I love to keep it in these mesh bags that I take with me to the grocery store. One, because the broccoli and the vegetables, they're still kind of breathing. And when I put it in this mesh bag, it actually allows it to breathe so that the condensation doesn't get all collected in the bag, which makes it go bad faster. So I actually always love to use these mesh bags for a lot of my vegetables. And so I chopped off the bottom stem of the broccoli. And as you saw in the stock that I was using, I actually just removed the peels from the stem. And then I'm left with this broccoli heart. So I threw the peels of the broccoli into the stock, and then I'm using the hearts to put into my ramen noodle soup. So I'm just gonna break up this broccoli into little pieces so that they're, kind of bite-sized and easier to eat in the soup. So I'm just gonna run my knife around here, and then I'm gonna chop up the stem. A lot of people would just normally throw out the stem of the broccoli, but the heart is delicious. And if I remember correctly, my brother is out there. When we were kids, he would love to eat the broccoli hearts, and I would love to eat the broccoli tops. So it was perfect. So we can always trade off, and I can give him my broccoli hearts, and he can give me the broccoli tops. When I'm working with kids, I love to call broccolis like mini trees, because really they do look like mini trees, right? They're just got the leafy part, then they've got the branches and stems. And, when you kind of associate it with something in nature, they tend to be a little bit more likely to try it. So next, I'm gonna grab my edamame, which I actually just use the frozen edamame that's already shelled. Just because it's way easier, it lasts longer, and you can totally buy the frozen broccoli too and just toss it into the soup and it cooks up just as well. And I will mention this just because, in one of the last episodes, I used to always tell people, and still tell people, that I try to get the organic soy products, just because if they're not organic, they are more than likely genetically modified, or they've been sprayed with all sorts of pesticides and everything like that. So I do like to get the organic edamame and tofu when I'm cooking with it. My brother says, not anymore, but yeah, I used to eat stocks only. I'm pretty sure I remember that correctly. Great, so as I'm waiting for my stock to come up to a boil, I'm just gonna get started on prepping my vegetables to sear in this pan. So I'm gonna take a little bit of this coconut oil, And you can probably tell how warm it is in my house because this coconut oil has already liquefied, and I like to keep the house warm. So otherwise it would normally be hardened at room temperature, where I would need a spoon to scrape it out. But it's that warm in here. It's like the tropics in here. I'm not gonna lie, which is where coconut oil comes from. So I love it. It's actually really good for your skin too. So, you know, if I get a little bit on my hands, I actually just kind of rub it in, especially with this like winter dryness. It's great. And then your hands start to smell like coconut oil. So why not, right? So I'm just gonna start heating up this pan, and then I'm gonna prep all of my vegetables. Here I have some beautiful portobello mushrooms. They're baby portobello mushrooms. And I will say that I like storing them in the fridge in a paper bag because they tend to last a lot longer. When I have it in, you know, if you try to keep it in any other sort of bag, again, the condensation kind of collects on the mushrooms, and then they start to get a little almost like rotten and moldy, and then the mushrooms will go bad probably within a few days. That's why I never buy sliced mushrooms from the store, because they're usually not great after the first day or two that you buy them, right? And plus you don't know when those mushrooms were sliced, so I'd rather just slice them fresh myself so I know for sure that they are fresh and ready to go. Next, I have some onion. Let me see. And what I usually do is I prep a whole bunch of onions ahead of time, you know, maybe like 1 or 2 onions. So that way, when it comes time to cook, I already have them prepped and ready to go. So I'm just gonna take this onion, and you can use any type of onion you want. You can use red onion, white onion, yellow onion. If you have shallots, you can use those too. I don't cut them too small because they are going into a soup, and they'll kind of get mushy and fall apart if the onions are sliced a little bit too small. So I think I want a little bit more red onion actually. I'm just gonna slice this up. There we go. And then I have some red bell pepper too. Again, it was left over from lunch, so I'm just gonna cut them into slices. And you can, again, you can use any color you want, the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, kind of. Sometimes it kind of depends on how much they're cost at the market. You know, sometimes the red ones are a lot more expensive. Sometimes they're pretty close in price. So I like to buy the rainbow colored ones just so I have a mix of different colors in my cooking. So if you were to use raw chicken or some tofu in this dish, I would totally pan sear it right now, just to get a little bit of that like crispiness and that brown color on it first. But since I have some pre-cooked chicken all ready to go, I'm just gonna use that instead. So I'm gonna prep some of my garlic and my ginger. And I'm just gonna take my spoon just to peel the ginger. I don't know if you can see that too well, but I'm gonna peel the ginger with that. And then I'm gonna slice it. Actually, I'm gonna grate it. I like grating my ginger. Just because the ginger can be quite fibrous. And then so when I use a microplane, it actually doesn't let the fibrous part go through, which is what I like. So I'm actually just gonna grate this directly into the pan because I wanna get that ginger going right away. And you'll start to smell it once it's in the pan. There we go. And then I'll take maybe I'll take like 2 cloves of garlic. I really like garlic. So what I'm doing is just sticking my knife in there and pushing it away so that I can get the garlic cloves out of the head a little bit easier. And I'm not gonna try that bowl thing like I did the other time. I'm just gonna crush it like I normally do. So I'm gonna take The garlic cloves, I'm gonna face them with the smooth side facing towards me. Just give it a little bit of a smash. And then I'm gonna cut the end of the garlic off, and that should release the garlic clove pretty easily. And the garlic does get all sticky and stuff, so I'm gonna take the skins off right here. There we go. I'm gonna just finely chop some of this garlic. I like to leave them in slices just so, you know, when you bite into the garlic, it's like, oh, yeah, there's garlic in here. And you can kind of taste it a little more. Again, we are eventually going to put it in a soup. So I don't want to cut it too small. Once you get the garlic and ginger in there, you'll be able to smell it usually within the first like 15 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. I am starting it on a slightly lower temperature because I don't want these to burn. Great. And let's see. I think we're almost up to a boil here, almost. So if you didn't have a lot of space or a large stove, you could totally just throw this all into one pot and make it a one-pot soup, kind of like a hot pot. But I like to saute the vegetables a little bit ahead of time just to get those natural juices and those flavors out of it first before I add it into the ramen noodle soup over here. So next I'm going to turn this heat up a little bit. I'm going to grab a little bit of salt and pepper. And then I'm going to test to see how hot my oil is. It should be simmering once I put a piece of onion or mushroom in it. So I don't know if you can hear that, but it's definitely sizzling over there. So a lot of people say, oh, maybe you should do the onions first, maybe the mushrooms first. I kind of get a little lazy and I just throw it all into the pan, to be honest. Wait, gonna add a little bit of salt, not too much because I want to taste it at the end to see if it needs more salt. I'm gonna add a little bit of pepper in here. I'm gonna put a cover on it. And right now it's about a medium to high heat. And while my homemade chicken stock is ready to go here, I am gonna add in my broccoli. Broccoli doesn't take a whole lot of time to cook. Usually when it turns bright green, it's basically ready. You know, if you can stick a knife through the little hearts of it, then it's definitely done. And then I'm also gonna add in my organic edamame. I know I should probably be measuring this stuff out, but again, when I'm cooking at home, I kind of just eyeball everything. The recipes are great as, you know, a guide, but usually I can tell, you know, how much of something needs. And that looked about like maybe half a cup to 3/4 of a cup of edamame. Great. So, oh, I wanted to also throw in my organic rice noodle ramen here. And these cook pretty fast, which is why I throw them in around the same time as the broccoli, because you don't want to overcook them because then they lose that kind of that bite to it. So let's say if you were going to make a big pot of this, I would definitely cook the amount of noodles you're going to eat for the day. And then if for some reason you have leftovers, you'd want to strain out the noodles from the stock because otherwise it'll start to get mushy after like a day or so. And I also wanted to show you something from one of our previous episodes. If you remember, I had all of these scallions that I had cut down to the white part. And then I just put them in a pot of potting soil and I just let them grow. And look, you just have scallions all winter long, which is pretty awesome. So I'm gonna cut that. This is gonna go in as our garnish. So let me cut this one, and they'll just keep growing and growing, to be honest. I actually have more to plant, so they'll just keep growing all year long, which is amazing. And I'll just give them a quick rinse. And give my vegetables a stir here. Again, if I were using raw chicken or if I was using tofu in this recipe, I would just pan sear it first to get that nice sear before adding in all of the vegetables. Smelling good already in here. Let me put this cover back on. And let me also get out my cilantro. So just like the broccoli and the other vegetables, I love to store cilantro and any sort of herbs in these mesh bags. They just last so much longer because they have that room to breathe and they don't have all that condensation building up in the bag, which makes it go, which makes it kind of soggy and then it goes bad faster. Let me take some healthy bunch of cilantro here. I know most people are kind of like love it or leave it with cilantro. We do really like adding it into our dishes, but we don't love it. We don't want it to be the dominant flavor. So again, this is just going to be a garnish at the very end. So I'm going to just slice these scallions on a bias. I don't know why, but whenever I cook any sort of Asian food, I like slicing scallions on a bias. I don't know if anybody else out there does that, but I don't know. There's something about it that makes it affects the flavor maybe, or it's just the presentation of it. Okay, push those off to the side. And then a lot of people, you know, when they buy cilantro, they peel off all of the leaves and then they throw out the stems, but there's so much flavor in the stems that I actually just cut it all up at once. I'm like, why are we throwing out the stems? You know, it's like the mushroom stems. Why do people throw them out when there's so much flavor and it actually adds to the dish, I feel like. So I just give this a really quick rough chop. And that's it. And that's really it for most of the cutting that needs to be done for today. I did also add peanuts to the list as a garnish. But if you don't want to use peanuts, or if you have, you know, an allergy to peanuts, or somebody in your family has an allergy to peanuts, you could totally switch it out with sesame seeds instead. And like I mentioned in previous episodes, I usually just have a mix of black and white sesame seeds already in a jar, ready to go, so that when it comes time to finishing any dish, just sprinkle it on and it's already done. Great, this is looking so good. I'm gonna take my chopsticks just to break up some of the noodles, if I can. Mom, don't judge me for my chopstick skills right now. I'm just doing this to break up the noodles. Great. And that just helps to cook it more evenly. There you go. And you can already tell that the broccoli is bright green. It's still a little crunchy, I can feel, but it is bright green. And that is what you want. So next, I'm just gonna chop up some peanuts. And I do like to get the organic peanuts. Again, I try to buy as many organic products as possible. Just because these days I feel like they just keep adding more and more pesticides and chemicals to your food and other additives that it's not necessary. And I feel like it's really not good for your health. So I definitely try to buy organic when I can. And I try to recommend that to people. You know, I know sometimes it can be a little bit more expensive, but sometimes it's just really worth it. If you have a little food processor, you can also just chop up the peanuts in the food processor. And so what I like to do with these ramen noodle soups is, one, you can either eat it just as is, and it's just a really light and warming dish. Or if you would like something a little bit heavier, thicker, a little bit creamier, a little bit more rich, you can also just make a little bit of a curry paste yourself. You can grab some curry powder and mix it with a little bit of coconut milk, and then you can add it directly to the broth. It'll just give it a little bit of like a heartier and warming effect to the dish. So what I'm going to do today, actually, we have a curry sauce that I found. It's an organic curry sauce. And let me pull it out. It's a Thai curry sauce. And for me, I don't know if anybody else out there has this same issue, but curry sauces are very complex in flavor. So trying to make your own curry sauce can sometimes be very intimidating because they always use ingredients that, you know, might be a little bit harder to find. We've got, you know, lemongrass, we've got macroot lime leaves, some Thai chilies, coriander, galangal. You know, it's got so many ingredients in it that, you know, the one time I did try to make my own curry, it was way too spicy. Like my mouth was on fire. I tried to save it by adding a lot of coconut milk to it, but even that didn't help. So we do like to buy this yellow Thai coconut curry. I don't know if you can see it on the screen there, or maybe it's better on this screen over here. Because just a little bit goes a long way, and putting it into a soup like this just like bumps up the flavor so much. Great. So at this point, I am actually going to add in our cooked chicken. You can use chicken breast, chicken thighs, whatever you have. These were literally the bits and pieces that I had left over from some chicken that we had the other night. So what a great use of it, right? Just toss it into the soup. And if you had tofu, you could just cut it into tiny little cubes and add it right in there. Oh, so I have a comment from Sonia. Yum, I hopped on late and I see you're making ramen noodles. I've never made it. My husband and son love it. Need to make this. Where can we get the recipe? Sonia, I will reach out to you. Generally, when I send out the YouTube video, I'll attach the link to the recipe. Super simple and it's super customizable. So I can make sure you grab that recipe. Feel free to put your email in the chat too, and I can add you to our list to make sure you can catch all of our recipes. And thank you so much for jumping on, by the way. And chopsticks can do a lot of things. Yes. Chopsticks are very versatile. Thank you to my mom for teaching me how to scramble eggs with chopsticks, make banana muffins with chopsticks. It's a great thing to use, especially if you're trying to avoid over mixing something. If I'm cooking something like sausage or I use the chopsticks instead of tongs because they're just so much easier to use. Great. So our vegetables are almost done. They smell amazing. If you'll see in the screen, there's a little bit of that brown stuff stuck to the bottom. That's actually a good thing. I know a lot of people think it's like, oh, like it's starting to burn on the bottom, but it's not actually. That's actually where a lot of the flavor is. So I'll take a little bit of my chicken stock over here, my homemade chicken stock, and I'm just gonna pour a little bit into the vegetables to deglaze my pan. And it does two things. It does one, makes the pan easier to clean afterwards. And two, it releases all of that flavor from the bottom of the pan. So I can just scrape all of those brown bits up right into the vegetables, and it adds even more flavor back into them. Now that my vegetables have softened, I'm just gonna add this all straight into the pot. And looking at the size of my pot, I probably should have picked a bigger pot. For some reason, I tend to do that a lot. It's like, whenever I'm making a big salad, it ends up being really big, like bigger than the bowl that I'm putting it in. And this is only for the two of us to eat tonight, so this is plenty for us. So I'm just gonna bring this up to a boil, and that's basically our ramen noodle soup. It was just that fast, right? I mean, it really doesn't take so much. And like Chef Brandon was talking about in our last event, most of the work comes with the prepping of the ingredients. When it comes time to cook, it's putting stuff in a pan or a pot and letting it go. And let me see, I'm gonna take probably about, so I'm kind of doctoring up this ramen noodle soup here. And I'm gonna take maybe about a half spoonful of this. You can always add more, but you can't take out. So that's why I'm starting with a very small amount in case it becomes a little bit too much for us. And so if you do come across like some sort of Thai curry or a curry paste or a curry sauce that you do like, sometimes I would say stick with that one, because some of them out there are really great and some of them out there can be a little bit too spicy or maybe a little too muddled in flavors, but I really do like this one here. All right, and then let's see, do you have any other questions? I'm not good with chopsticks. Yeah, you know what, my partner, it's pretty comical when he uses his chopsticks, I gotta say. Not something to write home to mom about. Thankfully I learned as a kid. Thank you, mom. Thank you, dad. Because you know what, it's like a dexterity thing. And if you see little kids, they have those little practice ones. I guess they help, but if you give 2 sticks to a little kid, I think eventually they'll figure out how to use it without, stabbing their food. So I have some bowls, and I have my Chinese soup spoons here, and I've got my chopsticks ready to go. And so if you are celebrating the Lunar New Year tomorrow, noodles are a sign of longevity. So that's part of why I made this meal today, but also just because it is, just something that I love to make because it's so simple, Here we go. My soup is coming to a boil, and it is done. So I'm just gonna give it a quick taste to make sure all of the seasoning is all good. And when I made this homemade stock, I only put a little bit of salt into it because I wasn't sure what I was going to use it for at that point. So it's always good to salt after, whatever it is that you're making is completely done, whether it's a mushroom soup or, rice. It's going to be really hot. And it can definitely use a little bit of salt, but not that much more, actually. Let me give it a few pinches of salt there and give it another stir. Like I said, I probably should have gotten a bigger pot. It's all good though, it still fit. If anything, it fit a little too perfect there. There you go. And so to finish this dish, it's really easy. As long as you have all of your herbs chopped up and your peanuts all chopped up. And you know what, whatever vegetables you like, you can, you can add that in here instead of the ones that I use. You can use corn, you can use snow peas, you can use carrots to give it a little bit of a sweetness. Really like mushrooms, so I'm going to put a few more mushrooms in my soup actually. So I'm going to take these, a healthy bunch of cilantro and put it on top. Maybe I can put it over here instead. I don't know which view is better. Put my scallions, sprinkle that on top as well. And then I'm going to take some of these peanuts and put them in. And these are already dry roasted peanuts, but if you get the raw peanuts, you can just toss it into a dry pan or into the oven on 325 degrees and toast it for about like 10 minutes, you know, maybe check it after 5 or 6, 7 minutes or so. But then it'll get this nice like golden color on them. And it just really brings a depth and flavor to your meal with something as simple as just toasted peanuts. There we go. I'm gonna put my chopsticks in there as well. It's bad luck to stick chopsticks in there, but sorry. I think that's how the dish is made, and it's easy as pie, really. Actually, it's easier than pie in my opinion. But if anybody has any questions or any comments they want to make, feel free to put it into the chat, and I'm happy to answer them. Oh, Sonia, you have your hand raised. You want to ask something? It might be about the curry spice question, but she's wondering, what curry spice do you recommend if you can't make it from scratch? Oh, that is a good one. So aside from the Thai curry paste that I showed you, I actually made my own curry powder. Yeah. And then I saved one of these curry powder things. It's not really from here, but I actually made my own curry powder. So it's got like coriander, turmeric, paprika, cardamom, a whole bunch of things. And I've toasted it in the oven for about 200, I want to say 50 degrees, 275, something like that. After I toasted the spices in the oven, I let it cool, and then I put it into a spice grinder and I ground it up really fine. So if you don't have a curry powder or a curry paste that you like, you can always make your own. I know it sounds a lot more difficult than it is because you have to buy all these different spices. But the flavor of it, when you grind all the spices, it's just like an explosion in your mouth. You know, it's so rich and it's so much more flavorful. So what I would do is just take the curry powder and I would just make a paste with some coconut milk. And then I would use that instead in the ramen noodle bowl just to give it a very rich kind of a flavor. And yes, I can hold up the bowl to the screen. Let's see, I'm gonna try this screen. If it's better, if that's not better, I can use this screen. Before people were jumping on, the setup that I have here is quite comical in some ways. There's so many screens everywhere, I almost don't even know where to look. But yeah, if anybody has anything else to add or to ask, feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask. Otherwise, you know, I'm going to start cleaning up and I'm going to eat my dinner. Oh, I did want to add one thing, but I think maybe somebody else wants to add something. But if not, I have these Thai basil leaves that I had grown in the summer. And what I had done before, you know, the winter came in, I pulled off all of the leaves and I let them sit out to dry just in the windowsill. And when they dry, it's, you know, it's like you would dry basil or mint or anything. You could sprinkle it onto your ramen noodles. You can throw it into really a lot of different vegetable dishes. And it's just like, it's so flavorful. It's almost like I just pulled it out of the ground. It was really amazing. So yeah, that's.
Was that a red Thai curry?
Oh, it was a yellow Thai curry, actually.
Yellow
and I'll
Thai.
hold it up to the screen. Yeah, sure thing. And it is organic. This is Yai's Thai yellow coconut curry. So I love coconut with my curries, so which is why this one tasted great. And there's no, you know, crazy ingredients, you know, it's organic. shallots, lime juice, bell peppers, water, garlic, lemongrass, tapioca starch, sea salt, curry powder, turmeric, recruit lime leaves, coriander, Thai chilies, cumin, black pepper, cinnamon, and galangal. Which is why
Thank
sometimes,
you.
yeah, sure thing. Thanks for
Are you,
joining us, by the way.
thank you. Can you pop that name in the chat, because I'm on my phone and I can't really see the name.
Sure
Would you
thing.
be able to? Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I can email that to you too as well. So thanks for
That's fine.
dropping your email in the chat.
If you don't do it now, then you can send it to me via email.
Great. Nice. Thai curry. Great. Thanks for the question. Okay. And then if we don't have any other comments or questions, I just want to, thank you all for joining. I know we're coming to the top of the hour here. I hope you'll jump on our website to make a donation to Chefs for Chefs and No Kid Hungry. That way we can keep, continuing these fun cooking lessons and cook-alongs together with some of our awesome chef partners, raising money for these incredible organizations. So I will put that link in the chat, and feel free to connect with me on Facebook if you're not already connected. And let me see. Oh, here's sometimes I add dumplings to the noodles too. That's a good point. If you want to actually get rid of, the noodles altogether, just put some dumplings in there. That's a great idea. Thanks for that. And yeah. And so for those of you celebrating the Lunar New Year tomorrow, I wish you a very happy and healthy new year. And I hope you'll all stay tuned for our next live cooking classes, probably in the next few weeks. So thank you again for being here with me today. And it's been so fun and so great to see your faces. So thank you for joining, and enjoy your dinner, everyone. Bye.